This is Land of Havilah, Esther 5. Esther will ask the king to stop the Holocaust. When she goes in, he must extend the scepter or she'll die. After a 3-day fast, verse 1. Now on the 3rd day Esther put on her royal clothing and stood in the inner court of the king's house, next to the king's house. The king sat on his royal throne in the royal house, next to the entrance of the house. Comment: the arrangement of the rooms is a little confusing. The point is that she walked into the room without being called, so she's standing in front of the king, verse 2. When the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, she obtained favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther came near and touched the top of the scepter. Then the king asked her, "What would you like, Queen Esther? What is your request?" "It shall be given you, even to half the kingdom." Esther said, "If it seems good to the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I prepared for him." Comment: Esther could have made a request right then. The king seemed to be in a very good mood for it, but she opted to ask the king and Haman to a banquet. We could think of reasons to get on with business right away or go the banquet route like she's doing, but probably during her fasting she developed a definite impression that the banquet was the thing to do. Fasting cleared her mind. Several of the details of this chapter point to this being a midday banquet. Verse 5. Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, so that it may be done as Esther has said." So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Comment: at the banquet, verse 6. The king said to Esther at the banquet of wine, "What is your petition? It shall be granted you. What is your request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be performed." Then Esther answered and said, "My petition and my request is this: if I found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I will prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow, as the king has said." Comment: Esther's request is that she wants another banquet tomorrow with the king and Haman. Why the delay? The king already said, "Ask me whatever you want," and pretty much he said he would give it, so why didn't she ask? It must have been the Lord guiding her again. At the first banquet, verse 9, Then Haman went out that day joyful and glad of heart, but when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he didn't stand up nor move for him, he was filled with wrath against Mordecai. Comment: to review, the king ordered everyone to acknowledge Haman with a bow, and everyone did except Mordecai. He wouldn't bow because he was a Jew, he said. The refusal to bow filled Haman with wrath in verse 9. For Haman's own good, he shouldn't let it bother him. Quote, "The wicked man writhes in pain all his days," Job 15:20. And as Jesus implied, anger and murder are related, Matthew 5:21 and 22. Verse 10, Nevertheless Haman restrained himself and went home. Comment: Mordecai escaped that day only because Haman restrained himself. It seems that every minute Esther delays, Mordecai is at risk, but God's keeping him safe. When Haman arrived at home, still in verse 10, there he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. Haman recounted to them the glory of his riches, the multitude of his children, all the things in which the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman also said, "Yes, Esther the queen let no man come in with the king to the banquet that she had prepared but myself, and tomorrow I am also invited by her together with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Comment: by Haman's own admission, he has every reason in the world to be happy, but spite against one man has negated every good thing in his life. Proverbs 29:11, quote, "A fool vents his anger, but a wise man brings himself under control." Verse 14, Then Zeresh his wife and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and in the morning speak to the king about hanging Mordecai on it. Then go in merrily with the king to the banquet." This pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. Comment: Haman built a gallows and plans to hang Mordecai on it. He'll get the king's permission in the morning. Quote, "Whoever digs a pit shall fall into it. Whoever rolls a stone, it will come back on him." Proverbs 26:27. Esther 6 is next.